You guys won't believe what happened in New York.
Break the leg. Then break the leg. Put your hand, put your foot on my neck. That's right. Break it. Break it. Break it. Pull more pressure on it. Get up. You're not breaking my neck good. Break the neck. Put your weight on it. I said, get up, bitch. Kick in your face. Watch this.
Oh, kick in the face. He's wildin'. Flying kick. Oh my God, Falcon. Oh no, no, no! Oh my God! This is New York. Oh my God.
So you guys, the suspect was already proned out, handcuffed. One officer is straddling one leg, mounted on one leg. The other officer has knee on the neck. And you hear the suspect provoking the officer with the knee on the neck. Put more pressure, break my neck. They're having their back and forth right there. He's keeping pressure. They're trying to control the suspect. What happens is the officer on the legs is sitting on the calf, trying to immobilize the lower body. But the suspect's hips pop up and starts turning. The legs come out. Kick, kick, push, kick, push. Eventually one of these lands, and then the suspect goes all the way, and boom, falls into the actual train tracks down below, you guys. That would have been catastrophic. Fortunately, there was no train. She survived. They helped her back in. Everything was okay. And presumably, the suspect went into custody. No problem. Everything was good. He was already handcuffed. The question is, in this situation, for other officers who find a prone suspect, very normal situation, prone with the cuffs on, what can we do to avoid this from ever happening to any other officer ever again? Now, here's the irony. The suspect who was on the legs was mounted with the idea that we want to control this from happening, as if knee flexion was the problem that needed to be prevented. What we see in the video, however, is that knee flexion isn't the concern. Watch, it's hip flexion that's the concern. So the suspect's ability to get out of that position, even though handcuffed. That's why this was so telling. We've seen a lot of these situations where there's no handcuffs, and they do a push-up, they get up, they do all kinds of things. It's much harder. We always talk about this. They build the house. With handcuffs, the problem was knee flexion was thought to be the challenge that needed to be overcome. It wasn't about knee flexion at all. It was that hip flexion. As long as the suspect's knees can come to their chest, they can curl up and create problems for the officers in this situation. So what do we do?
So what we're going to show right now is even more important if the suspect is not already handcuffed.
Yes.
Because you are very helpful in giving me the time and the ability to handcuff the suspect because I'm on the upper body.
Yes.
So if you cannot control the lower body,
it's very hard.
It's very difficult for me to fight the hands. So what we would do...
Now here's the irony in all of this. Stay prone here, Evandro. So here's the irony. We think knee flexion is the problem. It's not. Knee flexion is the solution. So we have many techniques that we teach. I'll do it from this side, where you go over, under, come in, and we control the legs in this figure 4 manner. So knee flexion is actually the solution. Because right here, assuming you're cuffed, your heel's up there, maybe controlling the head or just chest right there a little. Go to your knees. Go. Go, 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 go. He's staying right here. He's not going, you guys. So knee flexion is actually what gives you the leverage to create hip extension. And hip extension is how you keep the suspect prone. And one way is this figure 4 leg entanglement, right? The other one that we teach, if you're here, boom, is to step over, reach in, scoop it up, and come on up with a single leg toe hold. Go to your knees. Even with no other officer, no knee on the neck, go to your knees. Go to your knees.
So
he laughs because it works.
Knee flexion is keeping us, is maintaining
hip extension. Look. Yeah. Versus thinking that this right here is the fight, right? And if you're fighting a little frantic kid, you think that this is the problem. And it's like, this is a problem. No, if you hold this, he's gone. If I mount both legs, same move. Go. Look, look, look.
Yeah, turn. And knee flexion, keeping knee flexion can't just be any way. You have to keep knee flexion with your whole body.
Yes.
Because if you, for example, let's say you just use your hands and hold his legs.
Yes.
Back. That is not enough. That's your arms against
or if
his
I did
legs.
this. Now it's arms against hamstring. I mean, quads.
A little bit of body weight. But once we do go back to what you were doing, right here, his whole,
or even here.
His whole body, if you need some distance, this is okay also. His whole body is behind keeping this knee flexion. Now, if you have that, put your whole body behind it again, if you're here, freeze. And his hands were not handcuffed.
Yes.
What we can also do is as he begins to post on his hands, I can scoop out his arms, and now use this, give me your other arm, give me your other arm. Look how Henner is available to assist me. We have 4 hands versus 2 because his shoulder and his body.
And that's also true for the single leg toe hold here. I'm right in the party here, like, yo, what's up? Post your hand up, post your hand up. Look, I'm right here, boom, what's up? So I'm connecting, keeping that hip extension and going for it. And that was what's so remarkable to watch, is that they thought knee flexion was the concern, right? We look at these, and this is not just for these officers in this situation. This is common for a lot of other situations. Prone, they think knee flexion is the fight. No, knee flexion is the answer. Hip extension is the problem. Now, there's one other element in this encounter that is very important, and that was the... Grab a chair, you guys. We need to talk about this. And if you're a police officer, you must hang around. If you're not a police officer, you have the option. But this is one of the most important talks we've ever had for law enforcement we want to have right now.
Before we jump in on that, it's nice to talk about how I was not experiencing too much pain on my neck or on my legs. Even though I was resisting a lot, there was pressure in like confining me to the place that I was finding myself in, but there was no pain in which it was
unbearable pain.
Unbearable pain. There wasn't. It was a comfortable control.
So your legs, for example, there was no pain in your legs.
Not on my knees, not on my ankles, not on my hips. Yes. But I was confined.
And this is important because what we want to talk about right now in law enforcement, there's this idea of pain compliance, right? And if you put it on a graph, you guys can check out the graph right here that I'm going to throw up. If you look at a graph, it's resistance level and force level, right? Those are the Y and the X. And what happens is as force goes up, as the pain that's imposed on the suspect goes up, the perception is that the resistance level will go down. And resistance level going down means more compliance.
So the suspect, more pain
delivered
to the suspect.
Pain compliance
will result in them
complying. But this is only true to a certain extent. So this graph of a downward clean slope is totally unrealistic. Here's what's more realistic. Okay, the altercation begins, there's resistance from the suspect, right? They're fighting, they're resisting. The officer at some point intervenes, and the hope is that at some point, right, there's a decrease, this downward slope when something happens and the officer does take control and use a level of force that does start to initiate some compliance, right? That's called pain compliance. And this window right here, you can talk a little bit about that. People have a perception that it's a destination, but it's a window that must be maintained. Talk a little bit about that.
The understanding that compliance is a destination, it's a place in which we arrive. So if I have non-compliance right here, once I arrive into a certain point, after that point, that's the misunderstanding, everything is going to be on my side. Therefore, officers use a lot of force and power and urgency of movements to arrive at that point faster. Now, with that behavior, expecting that after that everything is going to be fine is ignoring the truth, which is what Henner mentioned, which is that compliance is a window. So there is a place of non-compliance right here. There is a point in which he becomes compliant, but there's also a point in which he becomes non-compliant.
There it is.
There's an amount of pain that you can cause to a person in which they are like, okay, I'm with you. I'm ready to give up and stop fighting. But then there's so much pain, pressure, and discomfort that I lose my hope of compliance, and then I start fighting back for my life, and I lose control of my mind, and I am now fighting for my life.
And this is called pain defiance. This is so important, you guys. Pain compliance to an extent, but there does come a point where the switch is flipped, and that suspect who was trying to comply, possibly because of your effective control and uses of force, trying to cooperate can no longer because something happens and they bounce into this zone where they're no longer capable of complying. So now they become pain defiant, which means anything goes and they're fighting for their life at that point.
So in this pain compliance window that we see, it feels like that there's the point, like what you said, where there's a point where it's too much.
Yes.
And the suspect says, you know what? Because in the pain compliance window, the suspect respects to some degree, all right, I made a mistake. This is the police officer representing the law. And all right, I give up.
Yes.
In that window. But there hits a point where the suspect says, hold on. No, you're not a police officer anymore. Pain defiance is where when you are now somebody who is trying to harm me.
Yeah,
right? I feel like my life is being threatened.
And this isn't a conscious thought process that Hito's talking about. This right here is
not at all.
It's completely internal. It's DNA, human DNA. It's animal DNA. It's the lizard brain. It's the amygdala, you guys. So moving on also to, I added these 3 boxes on the far right here. First, insufficient force, control of the suspect is ineffective. If you don't have enough force, you don't control anybody, right? When they're fighting, assuming a fight is underway. Resistance is underway. Reasonable force, right? That's when the prefrontal cortex is active and control is effective. Now, ironically, it's active for both parties. For the law enforcement officer, they're in their prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for decision making, cognitive processing, and if-then situations where if I do this, this will happen. All that processing, that logical prefrontal cortex processing, PFC, happens right during reasonable uses of force, and when the suspect is subjected to what they perceive as reasonable force, they're under control, you've tied them up, they're cuffed, and now you're saying, listen, if you comply, we're going to pick you up, we're going to do this, we're going to go. You're allowing them to exist in their prefrontal cortex, and they're allowed to say, okay, if I cooperate, I'm not going to be there's not going to be an elevation of force against me. If I cooperate, everything's going to be okay. So they feel safe. But what happens is, at some point, if excessive force is used against them. Now, just to be clear, I'm not meaning the excessive force from a department's use of force contingency perspective. I just mean excessive force in the mind or in the DNA of the suspect. Something happened to them where no matter what's going on, they felt like they're now being violated and their life or limb is in danger beyond reason. Right? They're complying and their arm is getting jacked even further. Or they're saying okay and the officer keeps punching them. At some point, their desire to comply is irrelevant because they can't even if they try. When that happens, right, we cross what is called the PFC line. Look at the graph, you guys. I put it in both locations, on the right and down the center there, where we hit that bottom of the V and then we pop right back up. What happens at the PFC line? The suspect can no longer comply to achieve safety and protect their body. There's nothing they can do in their mind, right? Because the number one prerequisite for someone to maintain prefrontal cortex activation and to operate within their PFC, the number one requirement is that they have they perceive a sense of control. If they lose control or they perceive to have lost control in a situation, any situation, you lose your PFC control, the amygdala, the lizard brain, hijacks the operation and you start responding in fight, flight, or freeze. Literally life or death operation at that point. The PFC line, if you cross it, you jump from the window that Evandro was talking about into very dangerous waters because now you're not dealing with a logical human who knows they broke the law and is now trying to somewhat comply under your great control and technique and use of force. Right, where as they comply, they're cooperating and they're going with it, all bets go out the window and now it's 100% fight, flight, or freeze because they lost the perceived sense of control. And what was the control for the suspect when they're getting handcuffed? The control is, if I believe that I cooperate and you put less pressure, I have some control in that equation. If I cooperate and you put more pressure, I have no control. So any hope of maintaining PFC activation is gone when they lose that sense of control that you took away from them.
This is why it's so important for the officer to be very aware of what's happening during that window.
Yes.
Because when the suspect does comply a little bit, it's important for us to read that. It's difficult to read it though if while they're complying, they're also moving a little bit.
Yes.
Or they're saying comments to you. So you almost have to, any little sign of compliance, we have to give a little bit of respect. And when you give a little respect, you remove a little pressure, you now give them a choice to comply more or to go back to resistance, and then you add or you remove pressure as you see fit. So that's very advanced.
It's very advanced.
To read that compliance.
You have to reward every improvement.
Yes.
Like a child or a dog. You have to give them, they do the right thing, give them a little kibble. Little kibble.
Like a person.
Like an animal, like
anybody.
Anything.
Yeah.
You need to reward any improvement enthusiastically. Yes. So if they go to their belly and they say, okay, hands behind my back, you have to let up.
Even if they're swearing at you and they're kind of kicking their legs a little bit, but their hands went, sometimes they don't even realize that they're semi-resisting while complying. We see the person on top who's arresting sees them moving, and you say, oh no, there should be full compliance.
No.
Sometimes you might not get 100% compliance. You might get 60, 70%. They might relax a little bit. That is amazing. Reward that and more will surely come.
The alternative of if you don't get 100%, let's say you get 60%, 70%, they went from 100 down to 60% resistance, and you respond to that with 100% aggression in your attack.
What would you do?
No, so that's what we need to talk about, right? Because
you put yourself in that place. Think about it, right?
And by yourself, we mean every officer watching this video. Put yourself in this situation.
Yeah, the situation is I mount on you, and I wanna get cooperation from you, and then I punch you 2 times. I strike you 2 times, and say, hey, you better stop resisting or else. Or I'm gonna keep applying strikes, or I'm gonna keep applying pressure on this Americano, on this arm lock.
And then they cooperate.
And then the feeling after that, if I do that, is like, you know what? Okay, there's a certain respect. But what if I keep on doing? Our point is that all of us will do the same thing. And not because we would be challenging the law or you challenging the situation that is happening, but just because we literally feel that our life is in danger. And once a human being have the primal feeling in his heart that his life is threatening, they're gonna do whatever it takes. And the beauty is that basically what we're telling you is to be a little more gentle with the suspect, which can be counterintuitive. Like, no, that doesn't make sense. You broke the law. Depending on the activity that you performed, you deserve to pay in pain and to experience that overwhelming amount of pressure. And I'm not challenging that. What I'm challenging you right here and what we're sharing right now is that by taking care of the suspect and applying less pressure and less chaos and less pain, I'm taking care of myself, because I am not escalating the fight. I am not fighting a human that is fearing for his life. I'm fighting a human that has a prefrontal cortex activated, therefore can take decisions that are based on his and my best interests. So I'm taking care of him, but in reality I'm taking care of me and my fellows and the community.
Because you don't want to cross the line. So here's the irony of all this. You want to control a suspect. You think on the old scale, more pain means more compliance. It's wrong. It's a lie. It's one of the biggest lies in law enforcement. This generic term of pain compliance. We call it the pain compliance dilemma. It's a huge dilemma. Because if you just put that out there, blanket statement, more pain, more compliance. No, you have to disclaim that. And you have to teach officers, all DT instructors have this responsibility. We have to teach officers that the best way to control the suspect is with great training, great tactics, but in the context of the altercation, to give them a feeling of control. Because by allowing them to have some feeling of control in their surrender, in their compliance, and in the reduction of force being used against them, you actually allow them to maintain PFC activation. And that prevents amygdala hijack, which would cause the lizard brain to kick in, and now you're fighting someone who is literally primally, right from every cell in their body fighting for survival. And again, you're not a police officer anymore. There's no respect. There's no law. There's just survival. And how do I know this? If I'm sparring with one of the boys and they catch me in a submission, a wrist lock, he don't catches me and has me tight. Right away, I go up, I tap. If right there, he don't ripped into the wrist lock, I wouldn't tap again. I would not have to, I don't even have a choice what would happen next. My entire body would come together and do something explosive and unpredictable to survive. And I don't know what that is, and I don't have a choice in the matter. But I know one thing, Hidon doesn't want that version of me. Hidon would prefer that he catches it without crossing the PFC line, and then I tap, and then he gets his victory like he always does, and he's like, yeah, Henry got tapped again. He likes that compliant bad guy situation, but I have to be able to operate in it. Whoa, my wrist is in danger. I tap, let go, and I have to trust that that's going to happen, and that trust gives me a feeling of control, even though I'm losing the sparring match.
And now rolling that over into law enforcement, the suspect needs to feel like they're in some kind of control of their own safety. But this is all happening under our overall control.
Yes.
Because we want to finish that which we started off to do, which is to arrest them. So they're still under our control, even though we're giving them. So the small control that we're giving them is pretty much supporting, it's supporting our big picture control.
Now, what that makes me think is this. If you find yourself in a situation and you're pursuing the compliance, that will naturally tell yourself that you're pursuing to cause pain, to cause pressure. And once you pursue that amount of pain, you have to deploy energy, and you have to be more energetic, and you have to be faster and more assertive and more and more. Now, what we understand is that your only job in a fight like that, of course there's some exceptions, But in the majority of situations, law enforcement is to control the person.
Yes.
And my submission is called control. I want to control you so well, and he don't mention that, imagine an umbrella of control right here, and I'm only allowed to attempt compliance within the umbrella of my control. What is not wise to do, or we don't recommend, let's say, is to sacrifice control, get out of this umbrella of control to chase more pain, more energy, because that will cause energy expenditure on my side, that will cause the prefrontal cortex for myself and for the suspect to be deactivated. So the point is that it's staying within control. And when you see mount control, or any kind of position that holds someone down, that is the submission itself. Trust the time will calm the suspect and will reactivate the prefrontal cortex. Because they're going to be for both, exactly. I'm going to be more calm because I'm not trying to achieve anything. I already achieved.
Yes.
You're down, handcuffed, belly down, whatever it is, legs entanglement. Now it's just a matter of time. So we can find an agreement right here, and there will be ways in which you're going to apply pressures and strikes to accommodate
This
that.
is so good, you guys. Let me summarize this. Compliance should not be pursued as a function of pain. It should be control compliance. Compliance should be pursued as a function of control. Sometimes pain is necessary to enhance the control. But control is what we're using to achieve compliance. When that happens, the chance of you crossing the PFC line and triggering that pain defiance from the suspect goes down drastically. And this is what's so important, you guys, is that you do everything you can to defend against crossing that line. Because, let me just say this, if you operate in pain defiance, any one of us, are, as black belts, are capable of controlling anyone, even someone who's pain defiant, who's amygdala. Any lizard brain, good luck, you guys. These are lizard humans. There's no lizard brain that overcomes the lizard humans. So these guys, these officers, would control suspects even in pain defiance, amygdala hijack, wild fight or flight mode. So, but the problem is most officers aren't trained sufficiently to handle the pain defiant suspect. You have two options. Either A, become a black belt to successfully handle the people that you will all invariably and inevitably hit into pain defiance mode, or have the intelligence to know not to cross the line. That's it. You're either intelligent enough to stay in the pain compliance safely, and the way that you stay in pain compliance safely, and that intelligence we're talking about, is transitioning into a control compliance department, and that is what GST provides, and we're so excited to share with the world.
People think that in order to keep that window, they have to be a black belt. You understand? People have to understand that
only pain defiance requires a black belt. Pain compliance requires GST. That's it. That's why it's so beautiful. Minimal tactics, as long as you're operating safely, using control as the forefront, basic 23 techniques, level 1 GST. So here's what I'd like to offer to New York, because they need help.
Yeah.
You know?
Who needs help?
Everyone needs help.
Everyone needs help.
However, this happened in New York, and when we make videos like this, we don't like to take without giving. And we appreciate the opportunity to learn. We think that the suspects it could have been much worse. The suspect could have got shot while handcuffed. I mean, we've seen worse, right? So the fact they did with the training they've provided, they were receiving, with the training that these officers have received, they did what they could. That's the bottom line. You're only as capable as the training you're provided in any job, law enforcement included. Here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to offer New York Police Department the opportunity to host a GST course for free for the department. What this means is we'll host at New York Police Department the internal head defensive tactics instructors will be allowed to do GST for free. We'll invite other departments from New York and around the world. They can come in and pay their own way. But New York Police Department is sponsored. We'll host it there. Your instructors will get certified in this training so you can then pass it on to the 50 or 100,000 officers you guys have. It's just one of the largest, if not the largest department in the world of law enforcement. And to know that they've never hosted, you guys have never hosted a GST, to us, this has to happen. So we're willing to put ourselves out there to make this possible. Anyone in NYPD, speak to the command staff, let them know. We come to New York, NYPD hosts, the DTAC head instructors get it, and then they can disseminate it to all their people. No charge to the New York Police Department to make this happen, all right? Everyone else, find a GST near you. Right now, we're on lockdown, so there are no GSTs. We're kind of delayed, but they're going to come up in the next several months. We're going to kick back into gear. It's going to be no problem. In the meantime, What's happening is a lot of officers are logging on. GST level 1 and level 2 of our program is available online through gracieuniversity.com. People are logging on more than ever, and right now, during coronavirus difficulties, 20% off for any officer, not even a DTAC instructor, to access the entire program online. Use the code COVID at checkout, you're gonna get 20% off. Additionally, if there's any departments who, because no group training is possible, which is happening, they're contacting us and saying, hey, we can't do group training at all. Can we use the online resources for all of our officers to log on and study? Because can you grow from watching?
Oh my gosh, that's what I was thinking. You had mentioned how people think you need to be black belts to reach this level of control, to be able to work in this pain compliance window.
Defiance.
Correct, pain defiance. And then you said, no, all you need is GST.
Yes.
And
for the compliance window, my bad.
For the compliance window,
for the green window, you're right.
You need GST. And you don't have to even do the GST course, the 5-day course, 30-hour course. Simply watching GST lessons, simply watching jiu-jitsu changes the way that you look at a physical confrontation, at a fight, which could change the way that you behave, the way that you think about the problem. And that can make a huge difference, and that's why watching this GST course that is available to all of you can do so much.
There you go.
Even right now, you're watching this video for this amount of time. You are already
You're part of the solution. You're part of the solution.
And for that, we're very grateful, guys. Just because you're exposing yourself and opening your mind for the techniques and for the mindsets that we share. And thank you for everything that you do in the community.
For everyone, any departments that want to do a GST rollout for all the officers to actually do this on their own, we're doing up to 60% off the GST online course. 60% off for bulk purchases for the entire department. Talk to the team, gst@gracieuniversity.com. You can email us. We'll get back and forth. For the rest of the civilians, or any civilians still watching this, know that you're in better hands, much safer hands. If one of the officers watching this video or having done GST arrests you, you're in safer hands because they're going to maintain that PFC activation for you. They're going to keep you in that pain compliance window. As long as you play along, they're going to alleviate pressure. And they're not going to go into this absolute PFC violation and then kick you into pain defiance. They're not going to do that. Better officers, trained officers, are safer officers for the entire community. And if you're still watching and you're a civilian, gracieuniversity.com right now, also 20% off every course, every lesson, everything. Log on, go check it out. And we're like over 30 free lessons right now. If you log on, create a profile, 30 free lessons, including some GST ones. You guys can see it all, a bunch of stuff for free, and then if you like it, you can buy more where that came from, all right? You guys know what to do. You're home, you're locked up, you have nothing else to do right now. Go to Gracie University, learn some jiu-jitsu, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you guys, GST for life.